katılımcı ekonomisine dönüşüne yön veren başlıkları alanında öncü ve güçlü isimlerle hep birlikte gün boyunca ele alacağız. Günün açılışında teknolojinin yaratıcı endüstrilere etkisini değerlendirmesini ele alacağımız bir ana konuşmayla sizleri baş başa bırakacağız. Şimdi sahneye Boston Üniversitesi'nden Profesör Muhannad Elhamud'u davet ediyoruz. Please. Sayın Elhamud bizlerle yaratıcı endüstrilerde yapay zeka, atılımlar, zorluklar başlıklı bir konuşma paylaşacak. Yapay zekayı konuşuyoruz. Yapay zekanın sanat, tasarım, kültürel üretim üzerindeki etkilerini ele alacak keyifli bir oturum diliyoruz. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Muhannad, and it's such a pleasure to be here in this beautiful city and beautiful weather. And thank you for hosting me. I'm told I have actually more than 20 minutes, so I'm going to take my time and not rush this. And I have two disclaimers. First, I'm a little jet lagged, so if I mess this up, I'm just going to blame the jet lag. And second thing, I'm not an artist, so, and you're going to see that very clearly in the slides, but that will come in handy at some point in the conversation. Okay, so I work in artificial intelligence, and I'm going to tell you about how art and artificial intelligence come together, and what are the challenges, and what are the things that are making people angry, and what are the things that are exciting, and maybe we can have some conversation later. Okay, so probably this video is gonna make me look old, but how many of you knows this game? Okay, a lot of people know Doom, great. Okay, so here we're seeing a gameplay, right? And it looks like someone is playing the game, right? But if you really focus, I don't think I have the laser here, but if you really focus here, you can see these are like, it's like a glitch. They keep like changing into numbers that don't make sense. And that's because this game is not actually a game. It's AI dreaming the game, okay? It's like there's no gaming engine. It's just basically AI generating one frame after another, imagining the game, okay? So it looks realistic. Like if you pay attention to the details, you can tell this is not a real game. This is imagined, and there are some inconsistencies. But overall, it looks very nice, right? Okay, so is that a reason for us to like panic and feel like, oh, we're doomed, we don't need software engineers and game designers anymore, we're going to lose our jobs? Okay, that's something we're going to talk about today. And it's not really just video games. I'm sure all of you has heard about Midjourney by now. Everyone is using it to generate some like really impressive images. A couple of years ago in Amsterdam, they opened the first AI gallery where all the art in the gallery was generated by AI. Okay.
Welcome to a non-existent car show. Let's see some opinions.
I mean, man, the acceleration is crazy. You look far, step on the pedal, and you are there.
I feel safe with him in an SUV, and it seems to be like the right type.
Okay, so this video is actually entirely generated by AI. These are not real people. Everything from end to end is generated by AI, okay? If you really pay close attention to details in the video, you can tell there are some inconsistencies as well. But overall,
welcome to a non-existent car show.
Like a
Let's
real
see some
advertisement
opinions.
on TV.
Man,
right?
the acceleration is crazy.
Music is the same. I don't know if you heard about Suno. It's a service that you tell it, okay, generate some music for me, and it generates music for you. So I said, can you generate some Turkish traditional music for me? And this is what I got. I wouldn't call this traditional, but okay, maybe inspired a little bit. Okay. Fashion design. Now you can like do like a dressing room, fitting room basically with AI. Even AI is really getting interesting with telling jokes and humor and comedy. I've tried generating comedy with AI. It's really interesting take on comedy, I would say. So this is no longer just a human activity, I would say. Okay, so as you can see, AI is like invading every aspect of our life and our jobs. And I would say maybe a lot of people are like panicking now, like, okay, it's everywhere. Are we losing our jobs? Is the definition of our careers and lives changing forever? Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. First of all, this is not a new phenomenon, okay? This has happened many, many times over history. So in the 1960s, math teachers protested the use of calculators, okay? Arguing that calculators, if you use calculators, you're not really learning math, okay? We can argue till tomorrow about philosophically whether that's true or not, but the fact is calculators remained, and they are used in our everyday lives through computers right now, right? Okay, so they did not go anywhere. UK musicians at some points protested the use of synthesizers, okay, music synthesizers, okay. Synthetic music stayed, and it's considered art at this point, right? Same with painting. Some people at some point considered digital painting to not be art, but now I would argue most people think people who do photography and use Photoshop to edit the photos, that's still considered an art in one way or another, right? So all I'm saying here, all these technologies, just because we protested, they didn't just disappear, because we love convenience, okay, as humans, but somehow we learn to incorporate them into our careers and skills, okay? And I think AI is going to be the same, more or less. Okay, but is it also, well, so the first question was, is it new? The answer is no. Second question is it really as good as people make it look? It is really good, but also it's not perfect, okay? So for example, I know a couple of years ago, or even till now, you might find a lot of travel guides, but if you really look through them, you'll find a lot of inaccuracies, a lot of places that don't even exist, and because these books were simply generated by AI without any double-checking any of the facts inside them, okay? So you can find a lot of this material there, but it's AI generated it, and it's not a reliable travel book, let's say. And this is just one example. Okay. Also, there's some research that shows AI, even though it looks like it understands images, it's not really. It doesn't really. So, for example, this is one research where it says, okay, if you give AI this picture and ask, can you describe it? It actually gives you some incorrect details, that the tennis court is blue with white lines, which is not correct. Just because the background has blue doesn't mean the court itself is blue. And again, there are lots of examples like this. So AI is not infallible, all right? It's pretty impressive, but it still makes a lot of mistakes, and I'll show more examples soon. Working with AI also, it's not like you ask for something and then you get it and then that's it. It's not magic. Even if you want to use it, it takes a lot of back and forth, and please edit this, please remove this, please correct this, and I'll show many examples like that today. But mostly it actually makes a lot of errors with text and images. So for example, I asked it to generate this image about an advertisement using AI, and you can see, okay, actually, I don't think you can see it, but the text doesn't make sense. It has like grammatical mistakes, okay? Similarly, it's really bad with geometry. If you ask it to draw something abstract, it never really gets it right. I spent about 2 or 3 hours trying to fix this image, and I never got anywhere there. So bottom line is it's impressive again, but it's not always, it doesn't always give you what you want. Okay. You can even also make it worse unintentionally. So yesterday I was inspired. I don't know if you can read this, so I'll read it for you. Yesterday I was inspired. You guys were celebrating the fall of Constantinople, right? So I asked ChatGPT, can you create a painting for the fall of Constantinople? And it created this. Okay. Now, at first look, it looks impressive, but I'm a little of a history buff, so I know this is not accurate because that Turkish flag did not exist before the 18th century. Okay, so this is not correct. So I asked AI, this flag seems incorrect, can you fix it for me? Okay, and this is what I got. Okay, so I actually, by asking it to fix it, it actually made it worse, right? And again, you can find a lot of examples like this. So, I was just trying to show, yes, it is impressive, but it makes a lot of mistakes. And it needs proper guidance to give anything meaningful. So let's talk about some, I know I don't have all the time in the world today, so I picked like 3 challenges I really wanted to share with you that I want to talk about, and maybe even later in the panelists can expand on. The first one is about intellectual property and attribution. So I'm sure a few weeks ago you read about this, where you asked ChatGPT, can you turn this image into a Ghibli Studio kind of style? Okay, so you give it an image, and now it turns it into that specific style, and that created a lot of discussion about whether this an infringement of intellectual property. Okay, the jury is still out on that. Actually, there are many pending lawsuits about the use of original content in generative AI, and that can come from 2 arguments. One is, was the data that was used to create ChatGPT, let's say, to put it like simply, was it done with consent? Okay, from the creator. So that's the first issue. Second issue, should the creator be is this fair use? Can you say this is okay, or should the creator be compensated because, okay, you're using their work, so you should compensate them, right? So you can think about it from these 2 perspectives. You can, again, ask this question: who owns this art that you're creating? Is it the creator, the original art creator? Okay, seems like the creator has a claim entitled to some ownership here. Is it the end user? Well, the end user is the one who worked with AI to create this new image, so it seems they're also entitled to some ownership. Or is it the AI developer themselves or the tech company that created the model? Because, okay, if you create something and that thing creates something, you can make the argument that you also own the final derivative. So it's a really murky situation. There is still no answer. The lawmakers are still discussing this, but this is an ongoing debate. Solutions, like I said, it's still an open problem, but we can make suggestions. We can say, okay, maybe the original creator should get some compensation, like Perplexity AI is doing. Perplexity is a platform like ChatGPT, and they were facing some lawsuits, and they're now offering maybe they can make a deal such that the original creators get a share of the revenue. You can maybe create some way where if you create art, you can check a flag saying my art can be used for AI training or not. So you can be given, you can be empowered, you can be given the choice to do that, rather than those big companies just harvesting your art and using it. Okay, it's going to be hard to enforce that, but that's one way. And ultimately, we really need a more developed legal framework for this, because all the laws that we have now were not created with such a technology that can do so much in such a short time in mind, right? So the laws need to evolve to this with the situation. Okay. So that's challenge one. Challenge two is cultural bias. Okay. So I'm sure also many of you heard that AI is kind of biased, maybe sexist even, racist, right? So here I'm going to show you a quick example. I asked ChatGPT, create for me a new image where there's a successful doctor next to a school teacher. Okay? So I did it the first time, this is what I got. Second time, this is what I got. Third time, this is what I got. Fourth time, this is what I got. And every single time, the teacher is female and the doctor is male. Okay? Now, if you do this with text, sometimes ChatGPT is more aware not to be sexist, but in image generation, it clearly has a stereotype. Okay, so it's not foolproof yet. But this problem gets even more exacerbated when you're talking in a non-English language or in the context of a non-Western culture. So let's see another example. I thought, okay, I want AI to create a religious painting depicting a group of Turkish ladies praying together on Christmas Eve. Okay? This is what it gave me, right? Now, if you asked a human artist, probably they would not paint this painting like this, right? Because this seems like a bunch of Muslim ladies, right, from the way they're praying, but the background is like Christian, so there is some inconsistency there, right? Whereas if I replace Turkish with Greek, this looks more plausible, right? So you can see culture plays a big role, and these models work better for certain cultures than other cultures, okay? And this is by virtue that most of the training data, we call it, or most of the data was used to create these models comes from text that is in English language, and just whether text or images or any media that comes from Western culture. So I didn't want to put an example in Arabic here. I speak Arabic, but when I use ChatGPT in Arabic, the quality drops dramatically. So you need to be aware of this. If you're not using it in a Western English context, the quality is going to drop significantly. Okay. That's another piece of research I found where they show AI an image, and they ask, is the basketball to the right of the car? Okay? And it turns out, depending on what language you speak, your answer will be different. Because in some cultures and languages, usually the question is viewed from the point of view of the speaker. So here, to me, the ball does look as if it's on the right of the car, right? Because from my perspective, it is to the right of the car, okay? But that's not true in all languages and cultures. In some languages, this would be the image where the ball is to the right of the car because it's from the perspective of the car, okay? So the research showed that ChatGPT always answers based on the English language perspective and not other languages, okay? So again, you need to be aware of these biases. That's always going to favor, it's always going to favor the English/Western perspective. Okay, solutions. It's really all about data. So like I said, these big tech companies need to incorporate more diverse data sets that come from different languages, different cultures. Us as end users, probably we can only do so much. Maybe we could fine-tune these models or use them more judiciously, but the responsibility is really mainly on the big tech companies that are creating these models. Okay. Last challenge is, will this go on forever? Like, AI just seems to be getting better and better and better. Is there a point where it's going to solve all these problems and it's just going to replace us? Okay. Apparently, research does not agree with that point of view, and the reason is simply this. The way things are working is a cycle. So big companies collect this training data, which mostly comes from online sources. Okay, now you have ChatGPT with GPT-4o, great. I'm like, oh, I'm excited. I'm not an artist, but I now can generate all this amazing art, and I generate this art, and I put it on my website. And then in the next iteration, OpenAI takes my website and uses it for creating the new model, okay? So you can see the cycle is going. It's like, okay, new model generates some new content, but this new content gets into the next model, and so on and so forth, okay? So it's like a loop feeding on itself. And that in engineering is not a good thing, okay? It leads to something called model collapse. I'm not going to get into the technical details, but just to show what that looks like, here's a model where, sorry about that. Okay. Here's a model where, let's say I wanted to create a model that knows how to generate handwritten digits, okay? And I went through this cycle again and again. You can see eventually the model generates gibberish. At the 20th cycle, it's not generating any intelligible digits anymore, okay? And we're already seeing this in real life. Like everyone now, for example, on social media and LinkedIn, they use generative AI to create their posts. And now we're seeing that all the posts kind of sound the same, right? There's no creativity, there's no personal touch. And that's what's happening, because if everyone is using the model and then the model learning from the same posts again and again, it's reinforcing the same style, the same persona, and we're losing the creativity, okay? So AI is not going to keep getting better and better if we keep following this paradigm, right? Okay. Solutions, well, personally, we need to be more judicious when we use generative AI. We should always, okay, you can use it as a tool, as an assistant, but you should never forget that you are the person who's generating the text or the art or whatever it is. You should always put your own personal touch, okay? And the big tech companies need to find a way to filter the AI content out so it doesn't get used in training the next model. Easier said than done, but that otherwise the research says by 2028 this is going to be a big problem for AI. Okay. So I just talked about the 3 challenges. So all of it has been about the challenges, the problems, but is it really all bad? Some people might say no. Actually, Gen AI has democratized art. I no longer need to have some lengthy training to become an artist. I can just like write, hey, generate this image for me, just like I did here. And it does. And honestly, it made my life very easy. I teach in a university. Sometimes I want to create some abstract art just to get an idea to my students. And it has helped me a lot. I'm really a bad artist, so it has helped me a lot, okay? I cannot deny that. But is this really true democratization? Okay, we can argue about that. I don't know if you've read this book. I love this book, Internet of Us. It is exactly talking about this phenomena, but 25 years ago when Google came out, okay, and defining, okay, what does it mean for us to use Google? Are we really learning by Googling things, or is it making us lazy? Is it making knowledge more democratized? Okay, we can be philosophers and talk about this for a whole day, but is this really making the world more democratized in terms of creativity? You could say yes, but you could also say there are issues there. So first of all, who has access to these models? Okay, we all have access to ChatGPT now. You need to pay a little more money to get a more powerful version, right? but also these big companies, they have models that we don't even have access to, okay? So they have a lot more power than us when it comes to these models, okay? Same, even if we talk about the ordinary person, you can't just write anything and get the art that you want. You have to learn how to write the prompt. We call it the prompt, right? We have to learn how to write this prompt properly. And that takes learning and time. It's a skill you need to learn. So it's not really anyone can do whatever they want. They also have to learn a new skill now, okay? Just like you need to learn Photoshop, I guess, right? It's a new tool. And again, this is a philosophical question. We might agree or disagree. Is this eroding creativity? Does this mean the definition of an artist is different now? Is this even art? Okay, I will leave that question up. I don't think I'm qualified to answer it here, but I think we should really discuss these questions. So where do we go from here? This is how I wrap up. I think there are 4 things that we should aim for. First one is policy making is still uncharted territory. There's still like lawsuits and figuring it out. So we should keep that in mind and try to push for policies that make sense for us as a human society. And this conversation should not be just the politicians. The artists, the creators, the software engineers, the politicians, they should all have a conversation about this. If you leave it to the politicians, they usually don't really have the expertise to write laws that can be enforced from a technological perspective. But if you also leave it to the technologists, they generally will do whatever makes them more money. So everyone has to be involved. It cannot be left to one party. Third thing is data. Like I said, we cannot just keep using whatever is on the internet and hope for the best. We need to make sure the data that is being used is not biased, not sexist, not racist, that it's diverse, it incorporates all the different cultures and languages. Otherwise, we're just going to keep getting art or generated content that has issues. And last but not least, again, some people are really angry with this, and I understand it. But like I said, this is not the first time this happened. And I think, while I understand the anger, just fighting or resisting the change is not really the solution. The solution is to embrace progress, but at the same time, in a way that makes sense to us, again, as a human society. Not just for the pure progress, right? It has to make sense to us as humans. So we need to view it as a tool that helps us, that assists us, that we collaborate with it rather than we compete with it. So this is my speech. I hope this was informative to you, and I look forward to talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your speeches. Thank you. Sayın Elmod'a ilham veren konuşmaları için bir kez daha teşekkür ediyoruz. Değerli katılımcılar, Inspire Yaratıcı Ekonomi Zirvesi'nin sıradaki oturumu, geleceğin yaratıcı endüstrilerini şekillendiren 2 önemli güce odaklanıyor: sürdürülebilirlik ve teknoloji. Sürdürülebilirlik ve teknoloji, yaratıcı endüstriler üzerinde etkisi başlıklı bu oturumda dijital dönüşümün yaratıcı sektörlerde nasıl yenilikler getirdiği ve aynı zamanda sürdürülebilir kalkınma hedefleriyle nasıl kesiştiğini birlikte değerlendireceğiz. Oturumun moderatörlüğünü İzmir Kalkınma Ajansı Genel Sekreteri Sayın Doktor Mehmet Yavuz gerçekleştirecek. Kendisini sahneye davet ediyorum. Buyurunuz. Tabii birbirinden kıymetli isimler de var bu oturumda. Öncelikli olarak John Freeman Coaster Foresight Lab Direktörünü davet etmek istiyoruz. Buyurunuz. Zeynep Falay von Fıkner, Falay Design'dan. Buyurunuz Zeynep Hanım. Profesör Doktor Alanur Çavlın Bircan, Hacettepe Üniversitesi öğretim üyesi ve Türkiye Free temsilcisi. Pekala, bekliyoruz sizi. Ve bu oturumdaki son panelist Emma Marova, Londra Cluster Sanat Tasarım Fuarı Direktörü. Hoş geldiniz. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Alanur Hanım'ın da hemen takılıyor. Ardından sözü size bırakıyoruz. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Keyifli bir oturum diliyoruz.
Evet, herkese merhabalar. Ben de öncelikle sizleri şahsım ve kurum adına saygıyla selamlıyorum. Bizim açımızdan oldukça önem verdiğimiz güzel bir projenin toplantısı için, bir uluslararası toplantı için bir araya gelmiş bulunuyoruz. Açıkçası yaratıcı endüstriler Türkiye için çok önemli bir konu başlığı. Yani burada hem ilk gün hem de işte daha önceki konuşmacılar yaratıcı endüstrilerin Türkiye açısından temsil ettiği potansiyeli çok güzel bir şekilde veriye dayalı olarak bizlerle paylaştılar. Biz de İzmir Kalkınma Ajansı olarak kendi bölgemizde yaratıcı endüstrilerin gelişmesini önceliklendiriyoruz ve bu yönde çok farklı çalışmalar yürütüyoruz. Bu kapsamda tabii ki bu projemiz de bakanlığımızın yürütücülüğünde açıkçası hem Türkiye'de yaratıcı endüstrilerin gelişimine hem de bölgelerimizde yaratıcı endüstrilerin nasıl gelişmesi gerektiğine dair çok önemli çıktıları bizlere verecek. Tabii bizim panelimizin konu başlığı yaratıcı endüstriler önemli bir sektör ama diğer taraftan yaratıcı endüstrileri çok yakından etkileyen sürdürülebilirlik, dijital dönüşüm gibi konu başlıkları var. Bu gelişmelerin yaratıcı endüstrileri nasıl etkileyeceğini, bu dinamiklerin yaratıcı endüstrilere olan yansımalarını burada çok kıymetli misafirlerimizle beraber konuşacağız, tartışacağız. Ben öncelikle kıymetli katılımcılarımızı sizlere takdim etmek isterim. Johnny Freeman kendisi medya psikolojisi ve dijital medyanın insan etkileşimleri üzerindeki etkileri konusunda uzmanlaşmış, önde gelen bir akademisyen. Goldsmith Üniversitesi'nde kendisi profesör olarak çalışıyor ve aynı zamanda Co-Star Foresight Lab'in kurucu ortaklarından biri. Özellikle Co-Star Foresight Lab'in deneyimini kendisinden dinlemek bizler açısından oldukça faydalı olacak. İkinci panelistimiz Zeynep Falay von Filtner. Kendisi Türkiye doğumlu Finlandiya merkezli ödüllü bir tasarımcı, stratejist ve girişimci. UX, hizmet tasarımı ve geçiş tasarımı alanlarında 20 yılı aşkın uluslararası deneyime sahip olan Falay, dönüşümsel tasarımda öncü bir ses ve toplumsal dönüşüm için tasarıma yaptığı öncü katkılardan dolayı 2024 yılında Ornama Ödülü'ne layık görülmüştür. Bir diğer panelistimiz Emma Hanım, Londra merkezli yaratıcı girişimci ağı Clusterland'ın kurucusu ve direktörü. Kültür, sanat ve yaratıcı endüstriler alanında disiplinler arası işbirliklerini destekleyen bu cluster aracılığıyla sanatçılar, tasarımcılar ve yaratıcı profesyoneller arasında yeni diyaloglar ve iş modelleri geliştirilmesini teşvik ediyorlar. Onların da bu konudaki deneyimleri açıkçası Türkiye'deki yaratıcı endüstrilerin gelişimi açısından önemli katkılar sağlayacaktır. Profesör Doktor Alanur Çavlin Bircan bir diğer panelistimiz. Kendisi Hacettepe Üniversitesi Nüfus Etütleri Enstitüsü Nüfus Anabilim Dalı'nda öğretim üyesi ve 2013 yılından bu yana enstitü müdür yardımcısı olarak görevini devam ettiriyor. Demografi, üreme sağlığı, toplumsal cinsiyet, göç ve nüfus politikaları alanlarında uzmanlaşmış bir akademisyen kendisi ve aynı zamanda ülkemizde ESFRI'nin de temsilciliğini yapıyor. Özellikle ESFRI bu Avrupa Araştırma Altyapılarının yaratıcı endüstrilerin gelişimi açısından önemi ve bize neler sağlayacağı konularında kendisinin fikirleri bizler için kıymetli olacak. Panelimizde iki tur şeklinde ilerlemek düşüncesindeyim. İlk turda her panelistimizin yaklaşık 7-8 dakika içerisinde yönelteceğim sorular çerçevesinde açıklamalarını yapmalarını bekliyoruz. İkinci turda yine aynı süre zarfında sorularımız çerçevesinde bizleri bilgilendirmelerini ve son aşamada belki genel bir değerlendirme ve varsa soru cevapla panelimizi tamamlayacağız. Ben Johnny Freeman'la başlamak istiyorum. Evet, Johnny Freeman, özellikle Co-Star deneyimini sizden dinlemek istiyoruz. Bu yaratıcı endüstrilerin teknolojik kapasitesini arttırmak için önemli bir yatırım. Bu sistemde Foresight Lab'in özgün rolü nedir? Türkiye gibi gelişmekte olan ülkelere bunları transfer edebilmek için nasıl bir model sunabilir? Teşekkür ederim.
Microphone working? Yeah, good. First off, just to say what an absolute pleasure it is to be here in Istanbul. It's my first time in Turkey, and I absolutely love it. So I hope I'll be back. The goal for me today is to share with you some flagship activity that is happening in the UK, that some of the Inspire team and Kreatif and Turkish authorities heard about when they came to visit my lab at Goldsmiths in October last year, and on the back of that, I'm here to tell you. So by the end of the presentation, I want three things to happen. The first is I want you all to be jealous of CoStar. I want you to want a CoStar here in Turkey, so that's number one. I want you to want that because you'll see the value that it's delivering to the creative industries in the UK. And then I also want you to realize that we're working very much in the same space. So Mohammed's presentation just now, which was excellent, spoke to a lot of the themes that we're dealing with in Foresight Lab. I also know that the other speakers we've met beforehand are sharing a lot of the research themes that we're doing. Okay, so that's the goal. If I could do it in 7 minutes, fantastic. What is CoStar? CoStar is a UK national infrastructure investment from the government of £76.5 million. Okay, it is matched by an equal amount of industry funding, another 76.5 million. So about 150 million in total, and it funds 5 labs over 6 years in the UK. The labs are shown on there. The National Lab at Pinewood Studios, the Live Lab at Production Park, Screen Lab at Studio Ulster, Real Time Lab up at Abertay, and Foresight Lab down based at Goldsmiths, but with partnerships across the UK, so with, and I'll tell you the partners in a second. Now, each of those focus on either live performance, screen production, games production, or the converged media platforms that we are using across the creative industries that apply the same technologies to different outputs, but for different use cases. So they're all production studios, and we're the brain. I always say that just to wind the other labs up. Foresight Lab is based at Goldsmiths. So what's CoStar all about? Fundamentally, it is designed to underpin the UK's position as a leading destination of choice for film, TV, and games production globally. Okay, so in the UK currently, I don't know if any of you have been to London and seen ABBA Voyage. You can see ABBA as they were when they were in their early 20s with their avatars. So literally 25-year-old versions of themselves. And in the audience, which is a live concert, it's really, really hard to tell that they're not real. In fact, some of our collaborators from across the world who've been to the ABBA Voyage come in and they literally have to go down to the front to try and work out what's going on with the technology. That same technology is used on all the big stadium tours, so at Production Park, Beyonce and Ed Sheeran and even some of Taylor Swift's tour produced there using the same digital technologies for the assets. And similarly, the Sphere in Las Vegas with U2's sort of hugely immersive displays, they're all using the same technologies, and the UK is one of the leading destinations in that. So why bother at all to invest so much money if we're doing so well already? The answer is we have to stay ahead of the game, and we have to be aware of how new technologies are going to change workflows, skill sets. We heard it in Mohammed's talk, like how important it is to understand how to prompt properly with generative AI, and that's one of the big areas we're looking at. So what we're doing, we are mapping the future landscape, showcasing what works, and we're aggregating and analyzing very, very large data sets. I love data, because that's our philosophy as well. The scope is really clear. It's on screen, games, and live performance. And we're focusing very much across the whole convergent landscape, policymakers, of course, but we can't do that. And again, to reiterate one of your take-home messages, we can't do that letting politicians or policymakers work on their own, because they'll get it wrong. And more than getting it wrong, they need to work in concert, and you'll see the structure of our project does exactly that. So I always say we use two big lenses in the Foresight Lab, and I use a driving analogy. We are the headlights and the rear view mirror for the production sector. The headlights is looking with foresight what's emerging. How's that going to change how people make content, consume content going forward, and what does that mean for us to be ready to produce for the 21st century and way beyond. The other is we can make predictions and we can understand the direction of travel for the sector, but to understand what the real impacts of adoption of these new technologies are, we need to monitor what's happening. And so we have a big function around insight led by our partner BFI, and I'll show you that in just a second, but that's tracking the adoption and use of what's working and what's not. Now, one of the really pleasing things that I saw in the final presentation yesterday with the 10-step action plan that you presented yesterday was a really fundamental recognition that we have to work together, industry, academia, policymakers, creatives, artists, technologists. It's a collaborative effort, and that's really represented in the CoStar Foresight Lab activities. So we're funded by UKRI, the Research and Innovation Funding Council in the UK, the Arts and Humanities Research Council in particular. We have a core partnership of Goldsmiths, British Film Institute, Loughborough University and the University of Edinburgh. And then we have all those companies supporting us, so Station 12, I2 Media, Arup, Julie's Bicycle. But really importantly, we have a policy network that is a creative policy network that's led by Loughborough, the policy function. We have the Screen Sector Task Force, so all the studios and film production and games companies in the UK, but also globally, and that's through BFI. And then we have the Foresight Board and the Investor Network run through Goldsmith, through my team, who are really busy, as you can probably imagine. I am going to skip through this, but I do want to just sort of throw some light on all the advisors that we have on the project. So we have the Foresight Board, and all the companies that you can see on here are represented on it. And not just companies, but some of their real leading lights. So whether it's Sarah Ellis at Royal Shakespeare Company, Gabby Jenks at Factory International, Steve Jelly at DNEG, Nell Whitley at Marshmallow Laser Feast, Lincoln Wallen, CTO of Framestore, they all meet with us at least quarterly, and a lot of them coming to London next week for South by Southwest London, because they share their experience of industry, of what's really needed, what's happening, what's changing on the ground. Now, this slide is probably the most important for the project managers amongst you, but really it underlines the philosophy of the project, because it shows that we are running foresight and insight really in parallel, but they're not divorced from the fundamentally most important element, which is we have to translate those learnings from foresight and from insight into policy. We have to take those learnings and make it happen for the sector. Otherwise, it's going to be a waste of money. And it'll be a waste of money also if it's not underpinned by real data. So we're doing a lot of work collecting data across our studios and across the sector. Now, these are 5 slides that I'm going to literally flick through in 2 seconds, because when you get to the website at the end, you can go to the website and download all these reports for free. So the first I just want to flag is a very sort of high-profile report on sustainability and the carbon impacts of the increased digitization. One thing you didn't mention earlier was that AI costs a lot in terms of carbon, both in terms of the compute, in terms of the storage, in terms of the cooling, and so on and so forth. And the BFI-led report for that sort of really highlights that. Read the report, it's brilliant. It comes out with some recommendations. We're tracking with our policy function everything that is going on globally and in the UK. So we're meeting with government ministers weekly, but we're also tracking the global activity through Olsberg SPI's activities. We've had our first data report looking at all the investment in the UK in immersive over the last 18 years. There's one big number that jumped out when I read it, and I was like, we better tell the press office at the funder that if the journalist sees this, they're going to say, that's a lot of money. So over £230 million has been invested in immersive R&D projects over the last 15 years or so. And that's the context in which CoStar sort of comes as this big new focus. So that's what CoStar is, and I'm going to start wrapping up by just really quickly 3 very quick things. The foresight reports highlight 3 elements which I think we're all going to talk about on this panel. But first is who gets to own machine learning. The second is what will be the distribution platforms for the future. How can artists engage with those? And the third is what's the future of creative work and creative production? And in particular, what's the artist's role in that? So I'm going to stop there and come back later. So thank you.
Geldi mi? Johnny'e bu bilgilendirici sunumu için çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Gerçekten CoStar deneyimi bence ülkemiz açısından da değerlendirilmesi gereken bir deneyim. Özellikle ülke geneline yayılmış olan bu lab yapısı bende de açıkçası hani ülkemizde bu NUTS 2 düzeyinde yaratıcı endüstriler konusunda çalışan İzmir, İstanbul, Eskişehir, Antalya gibi şehirlerde benzer aslında bir network yapısının kurulabileceğine dair bir fikir uyandırdı. Bu anlamda gerçekten CoStar deneyimin bu vesileyle daha detaylı incelemek ve ülkemiz açısından değerlendirmek gerektiğini düşünüyorum. Kendisine çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Şimdi sıradaki panelistimiz Zeynep Hanım. Hoş geldiniz tekrardan. Benim şöyle bir sorum olacak size. Sizin tabii ki yaptığınız çalışmalar çerçevesinde. Bu geçiş tasarımı üzerine biraz konuşalım istiyorum. Geçiş tasarımı kavramıyla neyi hedefliyoruz? Açıkçası bu kavram yaratıcı sektörlerde bir sistemsel değişimi tetikleyebilir mi? Ve yine insan merkezli tasarım, öngörü ve sistem düşüncesi. Yani bu 3 kavramın dengelenmesi ve bunların bir somut dönüşüm örneği çerçevesinde biraz daha bizim açımızdan netleştirilmesi konusunda düşüncelerinizi merak ediyoruz.
Çok teşekkürler davet için. I will switch to English if it's okay. So, I will start maybe with giving a background how I ended up in this transition design, or I don't know if we translate it as geçiş tasarımı, dönüşüm tasarımı. I think the Turkish language is not there yet. I graduated from Industrial Design Department of ODTÜ, Middle East Technical University in Turkey, and then went to Finland to do my master's. And the first 10 years of my career was about digital transformations. With Nokia, with some Fjord digital agency, I've been working a lot with UX design. And when the first time internet came to the mobile, how life will change. And I was there as a concept designer and design director. And afterwards, I shifted to service design, hizmet tasarımı, and started to work much more with companies' transformation into customer centricity. So a lot of my career is about explaining the role of design and creative practice for business and organizational transformation. And about 5 to 7 years ago, I got introduced to transition design, which is applying these design processes into larger societal transformations. And I got very excited about it, and 4 years ago, I started my entrepreneurial journey. And it was a leap of faith that started from frustration that our current organizational structures and institutions are unable to shift the transitions fast enough. And I felt that we need new type of actors in the system that can be more proactive for this change. Thus, I started to attract this interesting young designers. There's a program called Kreatif Sustainability in Aalto University, and they are graduating a lot of young people equipped with systems thinking, futures thinking, and creative capacity. And we started to build this entrepreneurial network as a new model to work with future relevant work. Because as long as we are in this traditional business structures or public sector institutions, we are naturally need to compile with that institution's expectations, kind of KPIs, and through this freedom of entrepreneurial capacity, we felt we can do something new that the other actors are maybe not easy to do. And this, now we call it a creative systems change think tank, but it's an emergent process. We are listening to what the collective members are passionate about, and we are trying to find funding mechanism to support our projects and systems change interventions. So basically, what is transition design? So it's a transdisciplinary approach that invites us to step back and ask what kind of future we are actually aiming for, what is desirable. And then what type of values and behaviors of the systems we want to have, and come from there to guide the actions we make today. So it believes actually in its heart that we have an agency to steer towards more desirable futures. And it doesn't use the foresight as just a strategic opportunity to kind of gain benefits, but actually step up that, okay, we all of us have an agency to impact what the future will bring. So we can actually be more intentional in today's actions about that. And then apply the findings to the new practices and technology strategies of today. And it consists of three main areas. One is about building systems knowledge, so understanding how we ended up here. What are these? We use a lot of methods from systems thinking to map this interconnectedness between cultural, technological, economical, social events in the past and its transition to today's systems. And we try to understand them from a more holistic perspective. The second part is a lot about futures thinking and imagination. So, and here, I believe creative practitioners and creative sector needs to step up and start contributing more actively in industrial and policy decision-making processes. Because the future, like what we can imagine, different but desirable futures, is a creative exercise. And it's not only about the past data, but it also requires this intuitive space that artists and creative practitioners are very capable in. So we need to bring that into the current processes. And in the last, we do a lot of transition pathways and interventions and futures prototyping to make this future abstract possibilities more tangible in today's context. And we work a lot of playful methods, radical imagination. Again, a lot of artistic methods has a value, and right now maybe missing from this more traditional business as usual work processes. I would like to give you one example from a recent case from Finnish Prime Minister Office and the Panel of Sustainable Development. So this is a governmental body that gives the policy advice to the government in Finland. So they had some outlook for the future, and then there was with Demos Helsinki, there was a process of scanning existing hopeful future narratives from science fiction and different research. And then there were some gaps identified, because we are missing this positive stories about the future that people can understand and start to kind of engage with. So our team has been developing a lot of futures prototyping methods. We had this digital voyage where a lot of government actors were engaging with. But recently in the big public library of Helsinki, we created this experience called Room 2050. And this was an immersive experience where anybody in the public, and also there was a lot of invited journalists and policymakers and academics coming in. And those long-term qualities of the future policy were designed as tangible artifacts in a Finnish family's home in 2050. And the visitors could engage with those products, and there were some ideas, and this will be published, so you can also check it afterwards. But it really created this connection between the citizens and this long-term policies. And that's where creative practitioners can add a lot of value to make things more tangible, what yet doesn't exist yet. Before I finish, I like to also give one last reference to research that I was part of. It was a EU Horizon research that ended a couple of years ago, led by Aalto University, called Creatures. And this was about role of creative practice for transformation. And there was several creative teams doing different projects. My team was doing a sustainability futures game, and now we had a lot of researchers observing the process and the impact. And eventually, we created this framework called 9 Dimensions, and this is more done for the funding bodies to explain the impact of creative practice and the way to talk about this creative practices and change. And you can see and go deeper into this website as well, and we are basically trying to build a new language, how to express this. You know, it can, because creative activities can change meanings in the system, change connections, or changing power structures. And we need to start expressing also the impact of creative practice, not within the art scene and artistic production only, but the impact to the other systems and other processes. And this framework is, I think, a great next step for it. Thank you.
Zeynep Hanım'a bu gerçekten bilgilendirici ve ufuk açıcı sunumu için teşekkür ediyoruz. Hani bu politika bağlamlarının sürdürülebilirlik olsun, dijitalleşme olsun, bunların aslında hani topluma yansıtılması açısından hani tasarımın bir araç olarak nasıl kullanılabileceğine dair çok keyifli bir sunumdu. Açıkçası yani bu tarz böyle genellikle soyut bir düzlemde işlediğimiz bu politika meselesinin uygulamaya nasıl aktarılacağının, yaratıcı endüstriler açısından nasıl bizim faydalanacağımız açısından çok keyifli bir sunumdu. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz kendisine. Şimdi sıradaki panelistimiz Emma Hanım. Kendisi İngiltere'den katılıyor. Benim Emma Hanım'a sorum şu şekilde. Yaratıcı endüstrilerde kümelenme konusu açıkçası Londra Cluster gibi platformların bu sürdürülebilirlik temelli yaratıcı iş modellerini nasıl teşvik ettiğini, kümelenmede nasıl pekiştirici bir rol oynadıklarını bize biraz Londra deneyimini bu bağlamda anlatabilir misiniz?
Hello, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be here with this amazing panel and fantastic people from all around the world and Turkey. Cluster is a very personal project for me because, and I'll give you a bit of a background of how everything started and how I really designed this platform, essentially a business. How I think I stand out a little bit from kind of the situation here is that I never actually really went for any government funding. I built a platform, I designed a business based on frustration and needs that artists have, really. So personally, I've curated over 80 exhibitions. I've exhibited over 1,300 artists around the world, the States, UK, Germany, and so on. And starting my career at a very young age, at 18 years old, moving to London at 15, and then working my way through education and being surrounded by artists, wanting to be an artist. And I saw all the frustrations, I saw all the challenges, and particularly the challenges in education, which I will talk a little bit about that in a second. But then, so I founded Cluster at the age of 20 years old. And I created this independent platform supporting emerging talent across different disciplines: illustration, photography, contemporary jewelry, craft, contemporary art, sculpture. And since 2016, we've hosted 24 international art fairs, and from these art fairs, and particularly from all the conversations that I had with all these artists personally, it's just to say, 1,200 artists, every single one I know, every single one of them I have spoken to, listened to, and wanting to understand what is going on, how is your career moving forward after education? Because I was particularly tackling and working with young artists from 18, 20 to 27, 28 years old, right? And there was always issues about how do I find a job? How do I move forward? How do I find that support? So through the years, what I understood what is needed is different types of educational programs. So I've conducted an artist in residency program, talks, seminars. I've worked with councils, I worked with brands, I worked with institutions, literally across the board. Whatever I could get my hands on, I got that. And so cluster really became something in response to exclusion. You know, I wanted to create a platform, a space for artists that could really get a hold of everything that they needed. So because we've been talking a little bit about ecosystems, I came to the conclusion that I want to create my own ecosystem. An ecosystem that provides physical space, mentorship, sales, online presence, everything essentially one artist needs to thrive, and every single part of that ecosystem complements with each other. And so I went on this completely independent journey to, you know, I had this sense of urgency. I wanted to just I wanted to create for them and to create a system that they can thrive essentially. But most importantly is to create bridges between artists and industry. That is one of the biggest challenges for all creatives, is how do they get connected to the right people? And so, of course, throughout the years, doing all these events, doing all the work, technology was a crucial part of it all, right? If we didn't have technology, I wouldn't be able to build a community of over 1,000 people. I wouldn't be able to have all these artists actually being active, talking to each other, being able to connect worldwide individuals from a worldwide perspective into one place. And so that really allowed me to scale, to reach. And so we transitioned from a grassroots London fair to an international platform, a supportive network system, which included mentors, artists, industry professionals, and everything essentially, everyone that are participating in that sphere. And of course, technology such as, website automation and online applications and CRM systems and social media, things that we all know and that we all use on a daily basis. They massively contributed to how we connect, right? And now, AI came about, and I mean, I'm here to advocate bravery, to eradicate fear, really. We have to embrace it. I think this is the new ideology, one way or another. I think this is the future of learning, of connection, and of how we really work. So when I started implementing AI in terms of my process within the team, from research to execution, I started saving 40 to 60% time in how I managed to do my workload. So if a project proposal would have taken me a day, now it takes me 30 minutes. And of course, with everything that I have in terms of data and in terms of information, training these tools to really be beneficial to me and to my team has been absolutely extraordinary. Of course, we have issues, as we spoke about, and these problems will continue to derive, and we will have to work around that. But that's absolutely okay. Every revolution comes with its issues. We just need to embrace it. We need to talk to each other, and we need to work together. Especially when it comes to government policies and restrictions and things like that. Kind of the ethical side of things. I think we will get a hold onto that eventually, but we have to use it. We have to utilize it, and we have to encourage young people to use it in the best possible way. Now, education for me is a crucial part of everything that we're talking about. Young people are at the forefront of our future, of how we function, and how we bring the economy to the next level, right? And so based on the experience that I've had, as I said, over 1,000 artists, that particular phase of their life, and to be honest with you, some of the way that they come of higher education, a bachelor, the things that they don't know, the things that they're not aware of, is shocking to me. And so now looking at AI, the fast-paced process and kind of creating an analogy, okay, learning 3 years of education, 3 or 4 years of education, coming out of it, not knowing what you're doing. And I find a synergy there, right? I find a synergy there of how we can accelerate learning, but really focus on the practical side of things, right? And this is what I suggest as well to government and to think about education. These are the roots of where we start from. I went through the traditional education. I did my bachelor, I did my master's, I did the college, all of that. Yes, I learned some things, but I started my business at 20 years old. I was brave enough to just go, and I learned everything on the spot. University did not prepare me for business, finances, how to read a market, how to access a market. I was just curious and driven. Yes, but not everyone are as curious and as driven, right? We need to be given the tools to look at them and use them, and to be taught how to use them. So education for me is a very, very integral part of the future, and how we all work together and how we tackle these young people from the very early start. So traditional education hasn't moved as fast as technology. 77% of recent graduates said that they learned more on the job rather than throughout their whole degree. And that is definitely something that we should not ignore. What was my response? So during COVID 4 or 5 years ago, couldn't do the exhibitions, we couldn't do the fairs, we couldn't do the talks, we couldn't do the gatherings. So asking myself the question, how can we continue to support artists? So we came up with an artist in residency program in London, 4 weeks, everything provided, accommodation, studio, and a bespoke mentorship program. Yes, it is difficult to scale, you know, when you have to do a bespoke mentorship, but the results were amazing, and I think we need to look at education from an alternative way. Technology can help us in a great way, and I would love to sort of advocate everyone in government, everyone working with young artists to kind of look at those early stages, integrate technology, and kind of take things to the next step. Have I used my time already? Sorry, thank you so much for listening to me.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz Ema Hanım'a. Hem Londra'daki kümelenme ile alakalı yapmış olduğu açıklamalar çok önemliydi bizim için. Hem de tabii son fasılda bahsetmiş olduğu, yani eğitimle alakalı vurgu özellikle çok çok önemli. Bu ülkemiz için de geçerli. Gerçekten hani eğitim sistemi içerisinde hani iş piyasasına hazırlık boyutunun önemsenmesi, bu anlamda kapasitenin geliştirilmesi çok önemli. Aslında birçoğumuz da hani okuldan çıkıp mezun olduktan sonra iş hayatında öğreniyoruz, sizin tecrübe ettiğiniz gibi. Hani bu aradaki bağlantının kurulması da gerçekten çok kritik. Bu vurgu için de ayrıca teşekkür ediyoruz kendisine. Sıradaki panelistimiz Profesör Doktor Alanur Çavlın Bircan. Hocam Esferi'nin Türkiye temsilcisi olarak burada olmanız bizim için çok önemli. Özellikle ilk aşamada, ilk roundda Esferi'nin, Avrupa Araştırma Altyapılarının özellikle yaratıcı endüstriler bağlamında bize biraz bilgi verirseniz, araştırma altyapıları, Esferi ve hani bu alanda biz nasıl istifade edebiliriz? Bunlar bizim için çok bilgilendirici olacak.
Bugün sanat tasarımcıların ve girişimcilerin hem panelist olarak hem de büyük olasılıkla dinleyiciler arasında yoğun olduğu bir toplantıda bir sosyal bilimci olarak, üstelik de kendi akademik ilgi alanlarımın da bir tarafa bırakarak Türkiye tarafından Avrupa Araştırma Altyapılarının sosyal ve beşeri bilimlerini temsil etme onuruna sahibim bir süredir. Bu alanda aslında sizlere bir önceki konuşmacılarımız gibi kişisel uygulama ve deneyimlerimden değil, ama hem bugün bir arada olduğumuz konuşmacıları hem de büyük olasılıkla dinleyicilerimizi de ilgilendiren bütün bu yaratıcı girişimci, bugün konumuz gereği kültürel çalışmalara ağırlık vermek üzere çalışma alanlarının finansal, kurumsal ve yapısal sürdürülebilirliği açısından büyük bir olanak olarak gördüğümüz Avrupa Araştırma Altyapılarını, kısa adıyla Esferi'yi biraz tanıtmaya çalışacağım ilk roundda. Şöyle bir akış düşündüm. Hani ilk ikisi Avrupa Araştırma Altyapı alanlarını tanıtmak ilk kısmı olsun. Ardından da biraz Türkiye'nin bu konudaki yatırımını, bakış açısını ikinci roundda zamanımız kalırsa anlatmaya çalışacağım. Avrupa araştırma altyapıları için Avrupa Strateji Forumu, kısa adıyla ESFRI, 2002 yılında Avrupa Birliği Araştırma Bakanlıkları tarafından kuruldu, konsey tarafından kuruldu. Nasıl bir amacı var? Bu bilimsel entegrasyonu geliştirmek ve uluslararası anlamda güçlendirmek amacı taşıyor. ESFRI alanı geleneksel olarak akademide ya da diğer girişim uygulamalarında rastladığımız aslında kişisel araştırma ve proje alanları üzerine kurulu değil. ESFRI bir araştırma alanını tarif ediyor ve bu alan bizim tek başına araştırmacı kimliğimizden, tek başına sanatçı ya da girişimci ya da yaratıcı kimliğimizden ötesine çıkarak hem kurumlar arası bir işbirliğini bu ulus ötesi olarak da sağlıyor. Biz Türkiye'de farklı üniversiteleri, farklı girişimcileri, farklı sanatçıları örneğin bir araya getirebileceğimiz gibi bu altyapı çalışmalarının içerisinde Türkiye'yi tabii ki aşarak Avrupa Birliği içerisindeki farklı ülkelerden de konsorsiyumlar oluşturabiliyoruz. Burada zaten ESFRI nasıl bir yapılanma? Bu yapıda üye ve aday ülkelerden temsilcileri bir araya getiren bir yapılanma. Bize ne sağlıyor? Bize hem ulusal anlamda ne sağlıyor? Kendi alanımızı aşarak mali açıdan da bizi rahatlatacak bir şekilde araştırma alanlarımızın, çalışma alanlarımızın Avrupa araştırma genel alanı içerisinde tanımlanmasını ve bütün aslında bugünkü örneğin bizi bir araya getiren Inspire projesinin mali ve finansal ve kurumsal olanaklarını da içine alacak şekilde bütün projelerin destekleneceği bir havuzu oluşturuyor. Peki bunlar nasıl oluşuyor? Bu altyapı içerisinde yol haritaları tanımlanıyor. Yol haritaları ilk olarak 2006 yılında tanımlanmaya başladı. Ardından 3 kere güncellendi. Bu yol haritaları stratejik ve uzun dönemli. Biraz sürdürülebilirliği bununla da ilgili. Tek defada yapılmış araştırma ya da uygulama projelerinden bahsetmiyoruz. Bir araştırma alanının uzun soluklu olarak hem yapısal olarak hem de finansal olarak ülkelerin ilgili bakanlıklarının da sorumluluğu altında desteklenmesinden bahsediyoruz. Yol haritası devam eden bir süreç. 2006'da 35 projeyle yol haritası başladı. 35 alt başlık altında başladı. 2021'de ise 63 projeye ulaşmış durumda. Bu altyapı projeleri 6 tematik alana dağılmış durumda. Dijital platformlar bir alanı, enerji diğer bir alanı, çevre, sağlık ve gıda, fen ve mühendislik ve bugün özellikle ilgi alanımız olan sosyal, kültürel ve beşeri bilimler alanı da bir alan. Bu alanların birbiriyle arasındaki iletişim de çok önemli. Bugün dinlediğimiz hep konuşmalarda da bu sosyal, kültürel, beşeri alanla örneğin dijital platformlar arasındaki kesişimleri hatırlattı bize dinlediğimiz deneyimler, çalışma birikimleri. 2025 yılında bu altyapı yol haritasının son evresi, yani şu anda güncel evresi Nisan ayında önerileri geliştirildi. Bir sonraki altyapı yol haritası ise 2030 yılında yeni alanlar tanımlanacak. Son başvuru aşamasında biz Türkiye'nin lider olduğu 3 araştırma altyapısı önerisini değerlendirme sürecine girmesini sağladık. Bu alanda çalışan hem Türkiye'de çalışan akademisyenler ve uzmanlarla hem de uluslararası destekle diğer ülkelerden, yani bir konsorsiyum içerisinde bu altyapı alanlarını bu sefer Türkiye'nin de lider olduğu biçimde tanımlama için projelerimizi geliştirme fırsatı bulduk. 7 proje önerisiyle girdik bu anda. 3'ü değerlendirme aşamasında. Bu uzun soluklu, yani sadece altyapının kendisi uzun bir süreç değil, 10 ila 15 yıl sürecek bir alan tanımlamanız ve bu alanda çalışacak çok çeşitli adımlar planlamanız gerekiyor. Bunlar araştırmalar, eğitimler, uygulamalar, tasarımlar içerecek bir bütünlüklü araştırma alanı olarak hayal etmeye çalışın lütfen. Değerlendirme süreçleri de 1 ila 2 yıl arasında sürüyor. 2026'nın sonunda tamamlanacak. Biz bu 3 projeyi takip ediyoruz şimdi. Hem bakanlıktan hem de farklı birimlerden arkadaşlarımızla. Biraz daha bu alan nasıl görülüyor? Biraz da hani resim olarak görelim istedim. Ortada sosyal ve beşeri bilimler alanını görüyorsunuz. Bu sosyal ve beşeri bilimler alanı özellikle bugün de daha çok ilgimizi çekeceğini düşündüğüm, özellikle cultural heritage dediğimiz kültür alanıyla, dijitalleşme alanıyla, art and humanities alanıyla, language alanıyla bizler için de bir motivasyon oluşturabilir düşüncesindeyim. Her ne kadar gördüğümüz resim içerisinde alanlar birbirinden ayrışmış gibi görünse de aslında Esfri yol haritasının temel noktalarından bir tanesi de bu alanların birbiriyle iletişiminin de sağlanması, aralarındaki geçişkenliğin de sağlanması. Özellikle kreatif endüstriler bize bu geçişkenlik olanağını hem sağlayan hem de aslında zorunlu kılan alanlar. Bu yüzden de kıymetli olduğunu düşünüyorum. Bu altyapı olanakları üzerinden de yapacağımız çalışmaların sürdürülebilirliğini değerlendirmeyi. Çok kısa bahsetmek istediğim Esfri'den ileriye attığımız adımdaki alanımız da Avrupa Araştırma Altyapı Konsorsiyumu. Bu da AB tüzüğü kapsamında bir konsorsiyum. Yine bilimsel ve teknolojik hedefler arasında bir işbirliği Avrupa ülkeleri arasında sağlıyor. Burada da yine üye ülkeler ve aday ülkelerin bir araya geldiği bir yapıyla tanımlanıyor. 2011 yılından bugüne kadar toplam 30 ERİK adını verdiğimiz Avrupa Araştırma Altyapısı Konsorsiyumu oluşturulmuş durumda. Bunlardan bir tanesinin içerisinde şu anda Türkiye. Türkiye deneyiminden hani birazdan birkaç kelimeyle ikinci roundda daha çok bahsedeceğim ama daha çok fen ve mühendislik alanlarında aslında yerini oluşturmaya çalışmış günümüze kadar Türkiye. Ancak sosyal ve beşeri alanlarda, özellikle de kültürel çalışmalarda hem çok ciddi bir ihtiyaç var hem de çok ciddi bir olanak var. Malzememizin insan ve yaratıcılık olmasının getirdiği aslında mali riskleri daha hafifleten, yaratıcılığı da daha sınır ötesine taşıyan, bazı teknoloji bağlılıklarını da ortadan kaldıran bir olanak alanı sunuyor kültürel ve sosyal çalışmalar. Nasıl avantajları var ERİK olmanın? Biz Sanayi Bakanlığı'ndan yöneticilerimizle birlikte Türkiye'deki farklı kurumları yaptığımız ziyaretlerde de söylüyoruz. Bu yol haritasının içerisinde, bu ERİK'in içerisinde yer almanın hem mali güvenliği hem mali avantajları var. Ama bunun dışında en önemlisi belki Avrupa Birliği içerisinde bir alanın sahipliğini ve liderliğini yapma olanağı içerisinde bulunuyorsunuz. Ve bunu yine Avrupa Birliği'nde alanın en uzman kurumlarıyla yapıyorsunuz. Tek bir araştırmacınıza, tek bir enstitünüze, tek bir üniversitenize ya da tek bir girişimci merkezinize bağımlı değil. Aslında o alan, bu alanda gelişen ve rol almak isteyen, öncü olmak isteyen, içinde olmak isteyen kişileri her an tekrar içine alma olanağı yaratacak biçimde. O yüzden sınırlı değil ama sürdürülebilir diyerek şimdilik sözü size bırakayım, sonra Türkiye kısmına gelirim.
Hocam çok teşekkür Hocam çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Gerçekten Avrupa Araştırma Altyapısı Avrupa araştırma ekosisteminin entegrasyonunu hedefleyen çok önemli bir araç. Sizin de ifade ettiğiniz gibi Türkiye olarak daha çok bugüne kadar fen bilimleri, sağlık bilimlerinde boy göstermeye çalıştık. Ama açıkçası özellikle bu projemizin çıktılarıyla beraber belki hani ekosistemin paydaşları İstanbul merkezli bir yaratıcı endüstriler Avrupa Araştırma Altyapısı projesini geliştirebilirler ki bence bu önümüzdeki en önemli ödevlerden biri olarak duruyor. Şimdi panelimizin ikinci turuna geçiyoruz. Yine aynı sırayla devam edeceğiz. Şimdi sözü Johnny'ye bırakmak istiyorum. İkinci turda açıkçası hani benim iki sorum olacak. Bu sorulara cevap verebilirseniz bizim için çok faydalı olacağını düşünüyorum. Birincisi dijital medya ve kullanıcı deneyimi üzerine çalışıyorsunuz. Açıkçası burada yakın gelecekte kullanıcı deneyimi kavramını yaratıcı sektörlerde biz nasıl göreceğiz? Buradaki gelişmeler nereye doğru evrilecek? Bir de özellikle konu başlığımızla bağlantılı olarak çeşitli iklim ve kadın odakları olan STK'larla, paydaş kurumlarla işbirliğiniz var. Bu tür ortaklıkların ekosistemle bağlantısı, onların bize sağladığı faydalar konusundaki değerlendirmelerinizi merak ediyoruz. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. So I am going to ask if I could go back, not for the immediate answer to these questions, but to where I finished my slides earlier, just to show the QR code for people to download the different things. But that question's a really important one. My practice at Goldsmiths, I wear a lot of different hats. I'm an entrepreneur as well. I set up a business at a very young age, focused on understanding human-computer interaction and user experience of digital media products and services. And one of the big activities in the, can I get the clicker? One of the big activities in the Foresight Lab is the Foresight activity. Thank you. And in the Foresight activity, we have two parallel threads of inquiry. One is around humans and one is around technology. And for humans, we are literally doing research with Gen Alpha, so as we can understand how they are seeing the world differently, experiencing the world differently, and expecting different things from the world. A couple of nuggets to share with the audience so far that we've picked up. One of them is around new formats, and this is interesting for the film sector in particular, because if you go and look in China these days, and you look in the UK as well, younger people are generally accessing much, much shorter pieces of content. So micro episodes, 30 seconds long, whether it's on Bilibili in China or TikTok here or in the UK, or Snapchat or whatever it might be, and they are very, very long series. And so the expectation is of much shorter, but shorter episodes, but much longer series. The other is around user-generated content and how, and this plays into, I think, what we were talking about yesterday, Zeynep, on media distribution systems and how artists can find ways to monetize their own creative output without studios or platforms taking a huge cut of the deal. So currently, the platforms make an awful lot of money on the back of artists' creativity. And we're seeing on Bilibili, which is the Chinese YouTube with 350 million or so active annual users, the main revenue from the platform is from subscriptions from one user, peer-to-peer subscriptions. So users making content, multiple episodes, and then other people buying subscriptions to access that content. So I think that's one really interesting domain, and it's one of the big areas that we're looking at on the Foresight Lab in terms of media distribution systems. The other, and this is going from the technical perspective on Foresight Lab, is around display technology, which is going to change radically over the coming years, and also AI, which we've already started to touch on. The big AI problems, and we talk about this in terms of the three biggest uncertainties, and I'm going to give you a link to download these reports in just a second. But the AI question is, at the moment, the big companies are running wild with creative IP and riding roughshod over it. Runway can make whole films, can make whole adverts, much cheaper than getting real people to do it. But they're infringing people's copyright, or potentially there are legal cases going on to test that. There's a different model of the world where artists themselves can create their own small language models specialized for their activities. They have more control over them themselves, and they therefore own the monetization rights from them. In the same way, and we heard Zeynep's example perfectly of the collective in Helsinki that you've set up, and again, I think from M's cluster in London, it's artists themselves forming independent creative collectives that then become the powerhouses going forward. So rather than being at the beck and call of big studios with big, deep pockets, the power balance will change. So you heard Zeynep talking about sort of plausible and desirable futures, and that's exactly the philosophy of the Foresight Lab. We're looking 20, 30 years ahead. There are a lot of barriers to get us there, but we will get there. And one of the ways we're going to get there, and just to finish the second question, is by being really honest with ourselves and with the sector about what the challenges are. We heard about the importance of biases in AI training data sets and the importance of inclusive data. So working with underrepresented groups is absolutely key. And the other thing we've got to be really honest with ourselves on is the climate emergency, which is not going away, and we only have one planet. And so understanding how we can mitigate the negative impacts of our work, which enable the positive impacts, is a really important thing for us to take on board. So I'm going to stop there just because I want to also talk a little bit between the panel later, but please scan that QR code, it will take you to our website. Or if you can read the text, that is our website. And if you want to get in contact, then please email costarforesighlab@gold.ac.uk. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm looking forward to talking in the coffee break. Thank you.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz Johnny'ye. Zeynep Hanım, bu turda da biz açıkçası sizden biraz bu Finlandiya örneğini dinleyelim istiyoruz. Açıkçası Finlandiya'daki bu deneyimin Türkiye gibi ülkeler açısından ne anlam ifade ediyor ve bize bu tecrübeyi nasıl aktarabiliriz?
Teşekkürler. Maybe I start with giving some example also to Johnny's the question you asked for Johnny about the future actors of the user experience. So what we are seeing in Finland is there's an increasing understanding of the customer or user in a larger way. So we have a lot of projects around more than human stakeholders and how to integrate nature as one of the key stakeholder or future generations that are unborn yet. So how can we bring this type of stakeholders' perspective when we are making decisions? And design discipline can actually, again, develop tools and methods to provide with this type of thinking. We are putting a lot of effort, and because there is, of course, AI and the impact AI is discussed everywhere, but the post-AI paradigm will depend on the hidden impacts we are not seeing yet. So what we need is to increase our capacity to think more systemically complex way and start experimenting with these unintended negative consequences to different parts. So I mentioned in my talk earlier that I was working with Nokia when the first time internet came to the mobile phones. And we work with this very smart people, so a lot of resources, and we could see, I mean, this is 20 years, so many of you remember the process. So we could see this connection anytime, anywhere, that, you know, we will access content. But none of us at that time saw that we will be struggling with addiction problem when we are raising our own children. Because the questions were not asked like that. We didn't have the task to look for these unintended negative consequences. And of course, companies are currently permitted and they are allowed to externalize the social and environmental negative impact they generate. So companies are not found accountable, yet the technology goes so fast that almost impossible for the policymakers to keep up with the speed and create the precautions to reduce the harm. So that's why what we need is to develop this type of new thinking and work with technology companies to start imagining what could be the unintended negative consequences. And there again, creative practitioners can play a lot of role because it's a lot about imagination, what has not happened yet. And then also this ecosystem players, like many different actors, needs to work together to envision these things and also think what else needs to happen. For example, one of the games that we are facilitating is mapping this transition story of the last 20 years, how we ended up here. And now we ask, okay, what could have happened in the past to reduce the impact, negative impact of today? What else should have happened? And probably currently the economic structures are incentivizing a lot of exploitative behavior. And so what could be the future models that could be preventative of harm of other actors? And Yeah, this is more important than ever because the impact of AI will be multiple-fold than the mobile and digital revolution. So, and also with all the climate impact, so we are expected to have a lot of crises in the future, and it's very important we develop capacity to think more systemically, more intentionally, and prepare these strategies with this like in a collective work. Again, coming back to the creative sector, we have a lot of role to play here because there's certain capacity in the culture sector among artists, among creative practitioners that is lacking from this scientific thinking and business thinking and engineering thinking. So we need to have funding for this type of projects. We need to do experimentation and intervention, and not with an agenda to find a solution, but to learn how to work together to steer towards more desirable direction. So this is a learning process, how these different actors who used to work in very silos and individual interest point of view learn to come together for collective well-being. And unless we can do it, then there will be much more harm in the future expecting all of us and our next generations. So, thank you.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz Zeynep Hanım'a. Şimdi Emma Hanım'la devam ediyoruz. Emma Hanım, bize bu turda özellikle fuarlar ve biyenaller gibi bu geçici yaratıcı mekanların kalıcı dönüşümlere nasıl katkı sağlayacağını ve Türkiye açısından bunun nasıl değerlendirilebileceğine dair yorumlarınızı paylaşır mısınız?
These type of events, art fairs, gatherings, exhibitions, are just a fantastic opportunity for people together. That is the pivotal moment of where all the different types of industry professionals and artists, they come together, right? How do we get there is also another interesting point, because we're talking about the digital aspect of things, right? And how nowadays we can leverage that, because yes, we've had our fair share of physical experiences, right? But again, that synergy, synchronicity between the digital presence and the physical presence. And why I want to just talk a little bit about digital presence and how that changed as well, how these physical events are. Nowadays, we can leverage our digital presence, our digital business card about who we are. The art world, the world that I work in and live in, is classist, is segregated to a certain extent, right? But now, with the digitization of things, with being open about who we are and showing what we do and what are our players and who are our supporters, things become open. And there is a certain abolition of these kind of traditional structures and systems. And so then when we come together to these events, it's magic. Because nowadays we can bring an institution, a gallery, a commercial business, a brand, all together under the same roof. And this is what I'm particularly interested in, a fluidity of businesses and organizations coming together, thinking about the bigger picture, because we need to work together. Segregation doesn't work anymore, and I think, you know, segregation in terms of class in the art world is an absolute thing. So what could be fantastic for Turkey is to open the doors for these big events, for big brands, big galleries to come here in an easy way. Let's put it that way. Why I'm saying easy way, because, you know, particularly talking about the UK, Brexit, and a lot of things have changed. A lot of fantastic expos, a lot of fantastic big events can't conduct their business and conduct their events because of certain restrictions. You know, would it be visas? Would it be, you know, a cost of bringing your equipment and your artwork into the countries and these kind of things? So being open to the creative industry and the different types of players and the different layers of the industry could be extremely beneficial, because at the end of the day, we want to bring the whole world into one place. This is what it's about, you know. Yes, absolutely, we need to work local, and we are, you know, we are more and more focusing on local craft and local community, but then all these global entities can come and buy local arts, take local arts and take them to, somewhere else around the world. So that would be my advice, if Turkey wants to be welcoming and do these big events, is just to make it easy for them. But yeah.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Son olarak hocam, espriden devam edeceğiz. Bu altyapıların Türkiye açısından sağlayacağı faydalar ve önümüzdeki döneme ilişkin değerlendirmelerinizi almak isteriz.
Yerden. Evet, yansıtabilir misiniz? Ben bu Türkiye'de eventlerin oluşturulmasıyla ilgili önerinin ekleyerek slaytlar gelene kadar devam edeyim. Yine benim sosyal bilimci bakış açımla çok keyifli bir mekan seçilmiş. Türkiye'nin emek tarihiyle yaratıcı endüstrileri bir araya getirmek, işte bunun içerisinde sanat ürünlerini paylaşmak çok etkileyici. İstanbul'da yaşamayan biri olarak da daha dış göz olarak ben de bakıyorum. Böyle bir mekanı Ankara bize erken endüstrileşme için bu tür mekan olanaklarını daha az tanıyor. Sizin de önerdiğiniz gibi böyle değişik mekanlarda da olanaklar olabileceğini düşünüyorum. İlk oturumda Avrupa araştırma altyapılarını Avrupa Birliği'nin oluşturma perspektifinden ve biraz AB üzerinden anlatmaya çalışmıştım. Şimdi biraz Türkiye'deki kurumsal sahiplenmeden bahsetmek istiyorum. Yine hani şeyin altını çizmek isterim. Yapacağımız çalışmaların finansal, yapısal ve kurumsal sürdürülebilirliği açısından bu olanakların iyi anlaşılması ve kullanılması çok önemli. Türkiye'de nasıl bir noktadayız? Yani Türkiye'de kurumsal sahiplenme nasıl? Özellikle akademi alanında daha erken zamanlarda Avrupa Birliği projelerine proje ortağı olarak girmek Türkiye'deki araştırmacılar arasındaki ilk adımlardı. Ancak şu çok önemli. Türkiye'de Cumhurbaşkanlığı 2025 yılının Cumhurbaşkanlığı yıllık programında bilim, teknoloji ve yenilik başlığının altında Avrupa altyapıları için araştırma stratejileri formu olan ESFRI ve ERIC özel olarak anılıyor ve bu konuda Sanayi ve Teknoloji Bakanlığı sorumlu kurum Türkiye'de bu sorumluluğu yürütüyor ve bu alandaki ortaklıkları hem Türkiye içerisindeki ortaklıkları hem de Türkiye'nin uluslararası düzlemdeki ortaklıklarını bu sahiplenmenin altında destekliyor. Bizler için önemli çünkü bu bireysel olarak projelere, proje pazarında dahil olmak nosyonundan farklı bir nosyon. Bu araştırma alanının sahiplenmesinin de kamu tarafından altının çizildiği, deklare edildiği bir pozisyonumuzu işaret ediyor. Açıkçası hem akademik kanadı açısından hem endüstri kanadı hem sanat kanadı açısından bu gücümüzü, bu olanağımızı hatırlamakta yarar var diye düşünüyorum. Bu kurumsal sahiplenmenin ikinci önemli noktası da 6550 sayılı araştırma altyapılarının desteklenmesine dair kanun. Bu kanunda yüksek öğretim kurumları içerisinde tematik araştırma laboratuvarlarını, araştırma merkezlerini, ileri araştırma laboratuvarlarını destekliyor. Bu ileri araştırma falan gibi ifadeler daha çok bize fen bilimlerini, sağlık alanını hatırlatsa da unutmayalım ki bu araştırma merkezleri, araştırma laboratuvarları sadece teknolojiyle sınırlı değil, sosyal ve beşeri alanları içeren bir tanımlamadan bahsediyoruz. Bu alanda çalışan gerek araştırmacıların gerek uygulayıcıların önünü açacak aslında tanımlamalar. Yine bugünkü projede gördüğümüz gibi kalkınma ajanslarının çok ciddi bir desteği var. Bu alanda yapılan gerek kısa süreli projeleri ama özellikle bugün üzerinde benim durmaya çalıştığım bir alan tanımlayarak 10-15 yıl arasında aslında uzun bir vadede içinde araştırma ve uygulamaların da yer aldığı geniş çalışma olanaklarından bahsediyor alan. Biraz önce zaten bu şekli bir paylaşmıştım sizinle ama şunu söylemek istiyorum. Tekrardan altını çizmek istiyorum. Espri'nin bu tematik alanlarının birbiriyle bağı ve bunların altındaki diğer araştırma olanakları mutlaka incelenmeli ve gerek ulusal düzeyde gerek de Avrupa Birliği düzeyindeki dokümanların incelenmesinin yararlı olacağını düşünüyorum. Birkaç kültür alanında proje örneğinden bahsetmek istiyorum. Bunlar biraz önceki slaytta gördüğümüz bu tematik alanların içerisinde yer alan proje örnekleri. Örneğin Clarion projesi, Common Language Resources and Technology Infrastructure projesi. Bu çalışma bizim şu anda Türk Dil ve Tarih Kurumu'nu da erik olarak içerisinde yer almaya, cesaretlendirmeye, desteklemeye çalıştığımız bir proje. Kurumsal olarak da bu konuda bir yanıt alıyoruz. European Research Infrastructure for Heritage Science alanı yine bugün buradaki katılımcıları ilgilendirecek bir tematik alt alan olduğunu düşünüyorum bu alanın. Digital Research Infrastructure for the Arts and Humanities alanı. Zaten adı ve tanımıyla hani burada bulunan katılımcıları kapsayıcı bir alanı var. Bunlar bir alan bu alanların altında çok sayıda projeye finansal ve kurumsal destek olanağı içeriyor. Ülkemizde başlıca kurumlar ne? Biz bu kurumların üzerinden çalışmalarımızı yürütmek istediğimizde bunlar tabii sadece bu kurumlar değil ama başlıca kurumlar kültür alanında. Atatürk Kültür Dil ve Tarih Yüksek Kurumu, Kültür ve Turizm Bakanlığı, zaten Kültür ve Turizm Bakanlığı bu alanın çok geniş bir kısmını kapsayıcı durumda. Altında örneğin Kültür Varlıkları ve Müzeler Genel Müdürlüğü çok önemli bir kurumsal destek. Türkiye'de çalışmalarımızı başlatmak, yürütmek, kendi alanı Türkiye içerisinde kurumsallaştırmak ve tanımlamak için. Cumhurbaşkanlığı Devlet Arşivleri, özellikle de içindeki Osmanlı Arşivi Külliyesi çok kıymetli yine bir alan. Bu birimlerle de iletişim halindeyiz Espri Delegasyonu, Türkiye Delegasyonu olarak. Marmara Üniversitesi'nin Dijital Bilimler Uygulama ve Araştırma Merkezi yine espri kültür alanındaki başlıca kurumlardan. Biz de kendi spesifik alanlarımızla bu kurumlar arasındaki iletişim hem Türkiye'de bu araştırma altyapısı alanının ulusal tanımlanmasını sağlayacak ve bununla eş güdümlü olarak da yani birbiriyle sırayla bile değil belki aynı zamanda eş zamanlı olarak da uluslararası işbirliklerine yer verecek durumda. Son olarak bu yol haritasında ile ilgili birkaç hani sürdürülebilirliğe yine odaklanarak birkaç şey söyleyerek bitirmek istiyorum. Aslında espri yol haritaları şekillenirken mümkün olduğunca ulusal olarak araştırma altyapı olarak ilerlemiş çalışmaları devam etmiş projelerin üzerine geliştirilecek bir proje teklifini içeriyor. Ve bu proje tekliflerinin önce proje teklifi olarak kabul edilmesi, değerlendirmeye alınması, ardından uygulama kriterlerini karşılanması durumunda Espri Landmark'ın içerisinde yer alması ve bu aslında araştırma altyapılarını yine ilk oturumda da bahsettiğim ERİK konsorsiyumlarına taşıma açısından bir izlek sağlıyor ve bu bir defada başvurduğumuz, bir yıl, 2 yıl yürüttüğümüz araştırma projeleri gibi sınırlı değil. Bu 10 ila 15 yıla yayılmış, araştırma dışında uygulama alanlarını da içeren, hem Türkiye içerisinde farklı kurumları bir araya getiren hem de Avrupa Birliği'nin farklı ülkelerindeki alanda çalışan kurumlar arasında hem tecrübe hem de finansal işbirliği ve destek olanağı geliştiren bir yapı. O yüzden çalışmalarımızın mali, yapısal ve kurumsal sürdürülebilirlikleri açısından hem Türkiye'deki bu alanın kamu tarafından sahipleniş biçimden yararlanmamız hem de Avrupa Birliği'nin 20 yılı aşan deneyimle oluşturduğu bu yol haritasını izlememizin çalışmalarımız için katkısı olacağını düşünüyorum. Teşekkür ediyorum.
Biz de hocam çok teşekkür ederiz. Panelimizi tamamlama aşamasına geldik. Açıkçası çok keyifli ve bilgilendirici bir panel oldu. Ben her bir panelistimize bilgilendirici ve ufuk açıcı sunumları için ayrı ayrı teşekkür ediyorum. Gerçekten yaratıcı endüstriler özellikle dijitalleşme ile beraber farklı bir patikaya doğru ilerliyor. Tabii ki özellikle yapay zekanın devreye girmesi ama sürdürülebilirlik açısından da başka bir açmazı karşımıza çıkarıyor. Çünkü ne kadar çok yapay zekayı güçlendirmek istediğimizde o kadar çok veri merkezini kurmamız gerekiyor. O veri merkezleri için ciddi bir enerji sarfiyatı gerekiyor. Dolayısıyla aslında hani ilerleyen aşamada İşte bu teknoloji bizim önümüzde gidiyor ama biz sürdürülebilirlik bağlamında bu teknolojinin gerek nasıl yönetilmesi gerektiği, gerekse de açıkçası burada daha önceki sunumlarda paylaşıldığı gibi hukuki açıdan, etik açıdan nasıl kavranması gerektiğine ilişkin süreci de paralelinde götürmek durumundayız. Buradaki her bir panelistimizin yapmış olduğu açıklamalar aslında bu çerçeve için çok kıymetli geri bildirimler sağlamış oldu. Biz de Türkiye'de bu yaratıcı endüstriler alanındaki önemli bir Avrupa Birliği projesiyle önemli bir kapasite adına ilk adımı atmış oluyoruz. Ve son olarak da Emma Hanım'ın dediği gibi etkileşimi arttırmak, sürekli bir araya gelmek çok çok önemli. Ben tekrardan herkesin katılımı için çok teşekkür ediyorum. Çok sağ olun.
Sayın Yavuz'a ve kıymetli panelistlerimize bu keyifli oturum için bir kez daha teşekkür ediyoruz. Şimdi 2 saatlik bir araya gireceğiz. Öğle yemeği arası veriyoruz. Hemen yan taraftaki bistro masalarda sizleri ağırlamak isteriz. Ardından saatler 14'ü gösterdiğinde Türkiye yaratıcı ekonomi ekosisteminde yeni yapılar ve fırsatlar oturumuyla bir kez daha beraber olacağız.